Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the visit of the Prime Minister in the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly, where he met the Chinese Foreign Minister, Mr. Wang Yi. He also met the US President last night at around 10 o'clock. He also met the Swiss President, the Italian counterpart, the British Prime Minister, Mr. Boris Johnson, as well as the World Bank President too. He's also expected to meet the Vice Premier of the Chinese government as well there, as well as the Iranian President, Mr. Rouhani, and Mr. Tayyip Erdogan as well. Now, obviously, when you talk about the meeting between the Iranian President, Mr. Rouhani, and Prime Minister Imran Khan, certain very important elements came under discussion. For example, the Kashmir issue, where we got the support from the Iranians as well as from the Turkish President, Mr. Erdogan. Turkey has always supported Pakistan in this cause, has always stood by Pakistan. So the case was with the Chinese, whereas as far as this particular visit is called Mission Kashmir. So Prime Minister at every level is trying to highlight this issue, is trying to tell the world what exactly is happening in the Indian occupied Kashmir, about the atrocities going on out there, about the abolishing of the certain articles like 370 and 48. So that has created a lot of problem. This is the 52nd day. I'll repeat, this is the 52nd day since the curfew has been imposed in the Indian occupied Kashmir. The amount of forces, which used to be around 700,000, is now well over 900,000 for just 8 million Kashmiris. Just you can well imagine the ratio I'm talking about here. And then the trigger-happy military of India, they've been given full authority to fire upon the innocent civilians. They don't mind firing upon children or women or elderly. This is what exactly is happening out there. Since a lot of news are not coming out, but still, according to certain sources, more than 15,000 youngsters, they have been picked up from Kashmir and they have been sent to certain jails all over India. So nobody knows about their whereabouts now. As far as the deaths are concerned, they've been reporting a lot of human rights committees and institutions have also reported about that as well. And this has been the major discussion at the moment. When Mr. Modi was in the rally, there was a lot of protest going out all over there in Houston, and the Pakistanis and the Kashmiris rather, who were all over that particular place. They came from various states and they were chanting slogans and they were holding the placards there to register their complaint. Now, this particular issue was also the major part of discussion between the Prime Minister Imran Khan and the US President Donald Trump. So, again, he has said that the US President has said that I'm ready to interfere in a way if the Indians and the Pakistanis both agree. But as we all know, that the Indians on one side claim that it's a bilateral issue, but whenever we offer them for talks or negotiations, they refuse to hold talks with Pakistan. So whatever is happening out there, they're just buying time and killing innocent Kashmiris. Well, to talk about this, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio, on my right is Ali Sarwar Naqvi Saab. Ambassador Saab needs no introduction as a senior diplomat, sir. Thank you very much. And we have with us a Brigadier retired Tipu Sultan Saab, who is also a senior analyst, sir. Thank you very much. And we'll also be joined in by Saeed Muhammad Ali, who is a foreign affairs expert, currently present in the United States of America. Thank you very much, Saeed Muhammad Ali, for taking out your time and being a part of our show. Sir, if you allow me, I may start from the gentleman sitting in Washington, because in my program last night also, Ali Saab, I had put this question to one of the panelists who was in USA, that we say that we should do this. We should, in a way that we should follow this certain line, or the foreign countries, or the UN for that matter, or the USA should do this. Now, Ali Saab, tell me that what exactly is happening out there at the moment, sir? And exactly the same question I'm putting to you as well, that how can we translate all those woulds into shoulds?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of discussion of what's happening out here, and I mean, if we go by not the multiple interactions that have been taking place, but solely by the interaction with the US President, which in many ways is the most important, what we can see is largely the Howdy Modi rally and the significant impact that that had was was seminal, and how President Trump sort of was wooing the Indian American voter, which is a sizable bloc within the U.S. And interestingly, I mean, these are voters who have been voting for Democrats, in these past few decades. So his attempt to really bring them onto his side, and then the positioning, done by Prime Minister Modi, how he conflated sort of 26/11, which he blamed on the neighboring state, with 9/11. And this narrative of both the countries, which President Trump also, gave credence to, of them both standing and needing to protect their borders against the threat of terror. So these kind of very ominous, statements coming out of that meeting. And then subsequently, there's a meeting with Prime Minister Imran Khan, where he brings up the Kashmir issue. And, President Trump right now seems to be, suggesting that he's good friends. I mean, I don't know what friendship means in real politics. But, trying to give this image that he personally is getting along great with both the leaders. But he has done a walk back from his earlier suggestion, which seemed to have been spontaneous, where he suggested that he would play the role of a mediator. Now he said that, you don't mediate if both sides don't want to come to the table. So in that sense, and certainly from Mr. Modi's remarks, there seems to be no intention of him wanting any sort of arbitration, and that's been a long-standing Indian position, which increasingly the U.S. has come to, to respect. Now, given the scenario, the options for Pakistan are limited, and we have been rightly, trying to emphasize that, if it cascades into a conflict situation, and the chances of that happening, less something is done, are high, that could be a catastrophic event, not only for these two countries, but for the larger region and beyond. And, the Prime Minister is talking about this kind of stuff, I mean, vis-a-vis the climate and the larger security environment, the challenge of stabilization in Afghanistan. But, there are still some opportunities, because now the international press also is realizing that, what's going on. I mean, they might not be equating Modi to Hitler, which to many sort of more neutral observers seems like, a big stretch. But, the fact that, I mean, he is ultra-nationalistic, I mean, what's happening, to the minorities within the country. And, those are the issues. So, for instance, I mean, we have tried to identify to the Human Rights Council, that, I mean, this is a humanitarian issue. Now, with the Human Rights Council, for instance,
Yes.
I mean, and on the high moral ground issue, there is certainly room for us to do stuff. So they have issued two reports, very important reports for the first time ever in the last 2 years. And, both those times, neither India nor Pakistan allowed them access to their, to their side of Kashmir. Now, that's something that Pakistan can immediately do, and that's the lowest hanging fruit. It might not have that kind of leverage, because at the end of the day, I mean, human rights agencies don't dictate, how states behave. But it would enable us to, have, again, a higher moral ground by making that unilateral action. And
All right,
perhaps
sir.
listening to some of the
I'll just get
suggestions
back
that
to
they
you.
made for
Ali
the
Saab, I'll
Pakistani
just get
side.
back to you, but something very important that you have highlighted. For example, Sir Saab, when the President of the United States of America says, well, once maybe they had a meeting in Japan with Narendra Modi, when the Prime Minister was in USA earlier, he said that, well, he was in fact, indirectly or direct, because it was practically not accepted by the Indian authorities at that time. He said, well, the Indian Prime Minister approached and he talked about the Kashmir issue and he told me to sort of mediate, right? Good enough, sir. But now the stance has changed. He has taken a step back. Now he says that I can do this if, there's a big if the Pakistani Prime Minister or the Pakistani authorities and the Indian authorities, they both agree. So I can. So since if they won't agree, so he won't. Do you think that on a certain level, especially when you talk about the President of USA is eyeing at that 4 million votes, and that means a lot, so especially the Houston side or the otherwise, when you talk about these areas in particular. So that means, that there are no friends as such in diplomacy. It's all about your interest, whether domestic interest or international. Your take, sir.
Yeah. You see, Faisal, there can be lots of analysis and speculation and interpretations of what is happening in the US just now between Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Trump. Now, first, I think we should put aside the Houston rally of Modi, because we are not measuring ourselves against Modi all the time, and we shouldn't be, because we should be looking at a bilateral relationship with the United States. It's long time ago, the relationship between the two countries changed. And I was in Washington when it started. This was in the early 90s, when Clinton became president for the first time. And then there were a think tank community in the US was talking about striking a new relationship with India, which eventually materialized and fructified in 2000 when Clinton visited India for 5 days.
Oh, yes.
And then in 2005, the Bush signed the Indo-US nuclear deal with Manmohan Singh. And subsequently in 2008, it was approved by the IAEA. And after that, there have been all kinds of new developments. Obama visited India twice. And so I don't want to go on and take up a lot of time on that. But India-US relationship is a strategic partnership. Therefore, what is happening to Pakistan, what Trump is saying to Imran Khan is good in the bilateral context, because we cannot aim to have any strategic relationship any longer. And in that context, the goodwill between Trump and Imran Khan is positive. However, we should not expect too much from Trump. No matter what he says about mediation and arbitration and all that, we cannot get a good deal from him, because the relationship with India is so strong that he is not going to be fair. And it's a long time that the US ceased to be a neutral player in this region. Therefore,
these are all vested interests, simple as that, sir.
So what we should look for, Faisal, is that he doesn't harm Pakistan, that he gives us a good bilateral relationship of trade and all that.
And he says he really wants to multiply
exactly
3-4 times, basically. Yeah.
So that will be good enough. We should stand by ourselves. We should deal with the Kashmir issue. I don't think Trump is going to help on the Kashmir issue, no matter what he says.
Now, sir, one quick point. Now, we have always, in a way, whenever we end up meeting or talking to the US diplomats or otherwise at certain even functions in Islamabad, they always say, well, I've always said that, the Americans are looking at Pakistan through the prism of Afghanistan, unfortunately. And that's not the right way. Yeah. But don't you think, sir, we have started doing the same, that we are looking at the US through the prism of India now?
Yes, that is the point. You see, some time ago, Shah Mahmood Qureshi said that the bilateral relationship with the US the road is through Kabul. And that was what you are talking about. Now we are looking at the India-Pakistan equation, and we are looking at Trump to play a helpful role. I don't think that is realistic on our part. We should aim to have a reasonable relationship with the US, without any damage coming to us, without any harm coming to us. But that is about all. The rest, we have to deal with it, because in Kashmir, what we need to do, of course we can't do it all by ourselves, that is for sure. But what we need to do is to raise international awareness about Kashmir, and thus bring in the international community to weigh in. Now, whether they can weigh in enough to bring it about a change just now in Modi or his administration, that is to be seen. But the effort should be made by Pakistan. And I think Imran Khan's speech at the General Assembly will be able to raise awareness about Kashmir in the international community.
All right. Now, Brigadier Saab, first of all, sir, your take on the previous discussion and the overall situation at the moment. A lot, because I don't want to talk about the Howdy Modi rally, but the reality is, sir, that the Indians, they have a lot of influence, and they are practically using it very wisely and very appropriately. This is a reality. Now you talk about trade. Look at the Indian trade. They want to take it up to more than $100 billion, the bilateral trade. And maybe in the future, you never know where it goes, because they have a huge market. They have got so much to export. And then the Americans are also, and remember, Donald Trump is more of a businessman, less of a politician at the current moment. This is how I look at him. So for him, sir, it's a market, and it's business and it's money. Whereas Pakistan, one statement I really want you to comment on is that the US president said that the Indians and the Americans are fighting the war against the Islamic extremists.
Radical Islam.
So radical Islam or Islamic extremists in a way together. What is that supposed to mean? The Indians have never fought any fight against the extremists. I mean, is he calling the Kashmiris extremists? This is what he meant? Or what exactly was brewing in his mind when he gave that statement? Sir, your take.
I think he wanted to appease Modi on what Modi says about Pakistan cross-border terrorism, and that bogey that he always throws to Pakistan, put the terrorism label on the Kashmir freedom struggle.
Correct.
And Americans, I don't know why is it dawning on us now, so late. Even in 65, when we remember the CETO and CENTO and the cables which are declassified, the American ambassador in Pakistan sent down a cable to Washington that India and Pakistan are at war, and if we have to support a country, it should be India. 1965. And then the Americans are supposed to be very unreliable in sustainability of their policy for the third world. And I mean, there are all the reasons why the Americans should have strategic relations with India and not Pakistan. If you think of regionally, if you think of globally, if you think of business, if
It
you
makes
think of
sense
anything.
from their perspective.
And we should not grudge that. The point is that why should we expect this from another country? All right, we should have good relations with the West, with the Americans and the rest of the world. But I think, why should Pakistan rest its hopes and policies and future only on thinking what Donald Trump has said to Modi and what his mood is and all that? When will we start thinking that we have to have a strategy which is beneficial to Pakistan, which is based on facts, which is sure-footed, and which has got a futuristic prospect and strategy enshrined in it? So I think it will be very naive, as the ambassador very aptly put. You know, we are too centric on what is happening in the rallies in America and whatnot. And Pakistan should realize that here they have an alliance, a strategic defense and commercial alliance with India, and in Pakistan they are dealing piecemeal as the situation develops for their favor. You know, they have come to the Middle East with two carriers. They have a situation with Iran, they have a situation in Afghanistan, and obviously they have got something to do with Pakistan in the context. And Pakistan should realize that, you know, the fires that Modi is burning of hatred, of fascism, and threatening Pakistan, taking the rest of the Kashmir and Baltistan and all that, are we preparing for that? And we only are, you know, sufficiently say, oh, we don't want war and we don't want to escalate. That's not sufficient. As a Russian strategist put it, you may not seek war, but the war might seek you.
Yes,
So are we preparing for that? What about our civil defense? What about our boys and girls and scouts and all that? Are we prepared in our cities, in our towns, in our schools across the turf of Pakistan of what is written on the wall and what might come? It is not warmongering. It is prepare.
So,
It
so
is
a
preparation.
quick comment,
You
and
know,
I want a comment from the gentleman sitting in US also say, the Indian military commander said that something is still happening. There have been camps, they have been doing something over there in
no,
Balakot.
you
Now,
connect
so you're
what
talking about a
you
flag, something, similar what happened on the
Balakot thing.
Balakot incident.
You connect what
Or something
Modi
can
has.
happen over there. Because
They have
another
gave
statement,
a,
he said that anything happens in India, whether Pakistan is behind it or not, we will retaliate. Now, what is that supposed to mean? Isn't that a direct threat to Pakistan, sir?
when
That's a
will
warmongering
when will
behavior.
Pakistan stop thinking of any foreign aid coming or any foreign influence of UN. It is very clear from the events in America and the UN that yes, Kashmir problem might be internationalized, but is it going to present a solution to you? Modi might say, oh, we want to negotiate, we want to mediate between India and Pakistan. He's never ever said lift the curfew. The Indians should not do that. Their revocation of the article is unfair and unjust. That is the statement that you should expect the least. If it is not coming, I think we can go and have a debate in the United Nations. We can meet Trump and pass some statements. Yes, as the ambassador said, that we should toe a policy
So, to be honest,
where the
no
Americans should
concrete
not harm
statements were
us.
passed by
But
Donald Trump. I mean, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, very categorically mentioned that we want very solid support to diffuse the tension between the two countries. These are two nuclear rivals, sir. And if something happens, it is going to lead into a war, and that war
the world,
could lead into an atomic settlement. Let's put it this way. So, if you allow me, let me go to.
But I just want to make one sentence. The history will tell you that any nation which was not prepared for what is coming in future will meet a
We'll get back.
disaster.
We'll get back about that point. That's a very important point that you've raised. Now, Ali Saab, talking to you, let's talk about this very important phenomena. Obviously, every single country has vested interest. Americans have interests in India. Indians have interests in USA. But now, the important role of the Chinese and the Russians that you cannot sort of rule out, sir. Don't you think? Because I've met a lot of diplomats recently, sir.
There is
And we believe, and we
that important relationship, and
should be very aggressive when it comes for sort of gathering support. So, your take?
yeah. So I mean, of course, I mean these are also other important relationships, and on the sidelines of the UN, I mean there is the entire international community. I mean there's not a lot of world leaders that our prime minister is meeting. I mean he's meeting some of them, but I mean certainly China is there. And interestingly, he's been asked a lot of questions, like at the Council of Foreign Affairs and other places, repeatedly about Pakistan's relationship with China. Because often when the Prime Minister talks about Islamophobia in the West, I mean, but pointedly, the Uyghur situation, and of course there's an axe to grind vis-a-vis China, and it is obviously an issue of genuine concern. And, that issue has repeatedly been coming up to him, which, he's been, from the initial deflections, the last time at least, he said that, the way China is, these are conversations that we have in private. And then he moved on, didn't really address, that concern with the Uyghur Muslims, in China, because some parallels have been made, to Israel and Israel's influence, in India and what India is doing in Kashmir. But from the outside, a lot of these countries say that India is perhaps also emulating a Chinese model. So that he has to deal with when he, interacts with the international community. Which doesn't have that sympathetic a view of the perhaps the bilateral relationship, but also, highlights these genuine concerns. So I think he's fielding those issues because the bilateral relationship with China, is not necessarily going to be sorted out on the sidelines of the UN. Here, his appeal to the larger international community. I mean, I agree that focusing on the US alone is a myopic strategy. I mean, and it would be good, that if we can overcome that strategy, which had started in the 50s with Tito and Cento in the Baghdad Pact, and then the 70s and 80s, and
Now, sir,
all
one
the
important
way.
area, Ali Saab, I really want you to talk about the morality. Should we expect some sort of morality from countries like China, USA, Russia, France, UK, or maybe Germany? Because morality is such a great word, everybody respects it. But when you talk about the diplomacy, I think it's more about the economic diplomacy rather than the moral diplomacy, isn't it, sir?
Well, it is, but they are, specific agencies. So very astutely, the Prime Minister did go, which is the point I was trying to complete, in my last comment, that he did approach the UN, the UN Human Rights Council, and that is the relevant agency, and he's met with a lot of other human rights agencies. But then you see, I mean, that is where we have some opportunity, that we have also, kept the human rights community at arm's length from our side of the border. And there are also some concerns vis-a-vis, journalists in Gilgit-Baltistan, vis-a-vis sort of other political groups in AJK, and those concerns are not that difficult to address. Vis-a-vis what's going on the Indian side. But we have been doing a tit for tat because we have not allowed the international community access to that, to our side, because India doesn't do so. I mean, India, what India is doing on its side is quite understandable that they don't want to stand up to international scrutiny. But, on the Pakistani side, there isn't that drastic a situation. So why do we have to go tit for tat? Because,
All right.
After all, it's to answer your question, these specialized human rights agencies do have leverage. So fine, the states have their own real politics, but as far as the international community goes, as far as the international consensus goes, so far, India is still the largest democracy.
I got your point, sir.
India
Let's take the debate further. That you believe that the
India.
human rights bodies, I mean, they are very powerful, very meaningful also. So they should be approached so that at least the issue is raised. It's written about, it's talked about, so people get to know about it. Now, sir, two important areas. One is about the current relationship between the two countries. Obviously, sir, we can't rule out the fact that they're really getting closer, and there are a lot of interesting factors. For example, China is maybe an economic threat to USA. And currently, today, in his speech, while talking to the UN Assembly, sir, he very categorically mentioned that many American companies and American investors are coming back to USA and they'll be establishing their businesses here. But at the same time, sir, we have heard that General Motors, they're laying off around 15,000 workers, and so much is happening at the same time out there. He's looking inward. America first approach is what he is following at the moment. But at the same time, sir, he doesn't talk about globalization. This is also what he mentioned. I think he said that this is the biggest, blunder ever committed. So this man has a plan. Don't you think, sir, we either should be in alignment as far as his global agenda is concerned, or do you believe that this is a time that if there are differences, they should be very much visible and the writing on the wall should be clear, sir?
There is an old proverb that when the elephant is walking in the jungle, then if you are a small creature, you should avoid getting under the foot of the elephant. But if you go around the feet of the elephant, you are okay. You go your way, the elephant goes its own way. So what we should avoid is getting in the crosshairs of the United States and not create problems for ourselves. But we have to fend for ourselves, and we should do that. Now, the global politics is very complicated, and US in China relationship is, has the positive aspects and negative aspects. What Trump is aiming at, and you are right, he has a plan, he has his own ideas. He is trying to browbeat his competitors, particularly China, but still deal with them and still have trade with them and still avail of their investment in treasury bonds in the US.
Oh yes, indeed,
So-
and that's a huge investment.
So
Yes.
that's a huge investment. So I think he's trying to do his things. Let him do that. What we should do is we should make use of the US, but at our terms and in our interest, and not look to the US for helping us. That is, that is sound politics. That is sound, approach of a medium-sized country like Pakistan. We are not big, but we are not very small either. We are a reasonable sized country.
I think so. When we talk about population, we are big.
Yeah.
In terms of size, maybe we are medium. Yes.
We are one of the first 6 or 7 countries in
Indeed,
the world.
sir. Correct.
So we have our place in this planet, and we have to make use of it, and we have to build our own strength. And with the US, we have to be careful. They have ditched us many a times in the past.
President Trump says that the previous governments did not handle or looked after Pakistan well.
Yes.
Even if you remember, on the floor of the House, Hillary Clinton, who was the former First Lady as well as the Secretary of State, very categorically mentioned and admitted that we left Pakistan after the first Afghan war.
Yes.
And that was where the problem started. I mean,
Yeah.
that was actually the real issue.
Yeah.
But now we shouldn't. So even Lindsey Graham, I mean, for that matter, really supports Pakistan, not only on Kashmir, but other issues as well.
Yes.
So there are certain sane voices there as well, sir.
Yes. No, they are. And thank God for that there are sensible people in the US. And I think their approach will be aimed at not alienating Pakistan. They still need us on Afghanistan. They need us for regional peace and stability. So that is why Trump thinks that it is worthwhile that India and Pakistan should talk to each other. But there, India is adamant and is totally impervious to any efforts.
Where is sir?
You talk of morality. It's just a term which is only used by the nations who do not have a plan. You're trying to teach morality to Hindu fascism. Are they going to learn it? You got to have a plan against it. And the Americans, you said that Trump said that the previous government did not deal well with Pakistan. Only 2 years back he said Pakistan will hit you at a place and time of our own choosing in his new South Asia policy.
And we will use India against Pakistan,
India
sir.
against Pakistan.
Not once, twice, on numerous
in
occasions.
India, we will coordinate, and we are having an exercise with India of tiger.
Intelligence sharing, military sharing, bases
Indian
would be used by both the
radicalism.
sides. Yes, sir.
The point is, it's all hoax. It's terrorism is a bogey. If you call Cambodia, Vietnam, Lebanon, Middle East, Afghanistan, they have killed lakhs upon lakhs of people. Is that not terrorism? And they have killed children, women in the schools, in hospitals, in marriage parties. Is that not terrorism?
What's happening in Afghanistan during the last 4 or 5 days? 30 people, 45 people, 50,
50
people being
were
killed on almost daily basis.
Yesterday, 50
yes, sir.
people were
That's
killed
what
by
I'm saying.
them. So,
on weddings, killing farmers. I mean, I fail to understand what's going on.
We should not be defensive about it. We should come out and tell them that the freedom struggle in Kashmir is not terrorism. We should put our foot down. I think the Prime Minister should speak from the podium of the General Assembly that the freedom struggle in Kashmir cannot be put in terrorism basket. And he must counter what Modi and Trump said in that Jalsa in Houston. The point is that if you want to stand on firmer ground, which is truth, you must dwell on it. You don't miss out anything, but you should be heard meaningfully. You should not be that timid that people should take you for granted. It's not that. Pakistan is not that insignificant a country. Pakistan is very significant. Pakistan is powerful. Yes, we have got our weaknesses. But we should not be overawed by the India-American strategic partnership and all that. We understand it is against China.
If they have a plan,
we have our own
we need to have a plan, sir.
We
need
have
to
a
look after your
strategic
own
partnership
affairs.
with China.
Absolutely.
And we should pitch that against it. We should go towards
And our
Russia,
Prime
we
Minister
should go
was
to
very
the rest
clear
of the
about it,
thing.
that your CPEC is their first priority. So means that the kind of relationship and the way he spoke about China the other day, when there were tough questions even put to him regarding China, I mean, he really looked after the matter very well. He handled it
Instead
brilliantly.
of trying to teach morality to the Indians, we should be prepared to teach them a lesson.
Morality
That is more
should be
important.
replaced by the word lesson.
Morality they can keep
Mirza,
in
anyway,
New
thank you very
Delhi.
much, sir. Thank you very much. We'll just take a break here, gentlemen, and we'll be right back after this. Stay with us.